He told the IRS he couldn't afford to pay his tax debt. Meanwhile, business accounts he controlled were paying mortgages on multiple homes, college tuition, payments towards a yacht, and even plastic surgery. And this man was an attorney and a former CPA.
Finally took a stand. Now the business looking clean, money coming through. Everybody asking who helped me break through. That tax guru got me thinking big and now.
I'm Tyrone Taylor, enrolled agent. This is case file 031, the attorney who told the IRS he was broke while paying for a yacht and plastic surgery. His name was Scott Allan Chappelle. Chappelle was an attorney, a former CPA, and a real estate developer and property management in Michigan. And his background matters because this story didn't start with a yacht or plastic surgery. It started with payroll taxes. If you own a business with employees, pay attention to this part. When you run payroll, you withhold federal income taxes, Social Security, and Medicare taxes from your employee's paycheck. That withheld money has to be paid to the government. You can't simply treat it like extra business cash because money is tight. But according to the Department of Justice, Chappelle admitted his companies withheld employment taxes from employees' wages, but did not pay all of those taxes over to the IRS. Eventually, the IRS started trying to collect. Now, here's the important part of this case. Owing the IRS money is not automatically a crime. People fall behind on taxes every day. Businesses have cash flow problems. Taxpayers sometimes legitimately cannot afford to pay everything they owe. There are IRS collection options for people in those situations. But this case changed when the IRS started asking Chappelle about his ability to pay those past due taxes. According to federal prosecutors, Chappelle told IRS employees that he and his businesses were experiencing financial hardship and couldn't afford those tax debt. When you tell the IRS you can't afford to pay, your financial situation matters. The IRS can look at your income, expenses, assets, and liabilities to determine your ability to pay. But according to DOJ, while Chappelle was claiming financial hardship, bank accounts belonging to at least 6 businesses he controlled were paying his personal expenses. And listen to some of these expenses: mortgage payments on 3 houses and a condominium, college tuition for his children, personal credit card bills, life insurance premiums, car payments, boat expenses, payments toward the purchase of a yacht, and elective plastic surgery. Now, don't misunderstand the tax lesson here. A business paying a personal expense is not automatically illegal. Depending on the facts, there can be different tax and accounting treatments for that payment. The problem here was the contradiction. Chappelle was telling the IRS that he and his companies couldn't afford their tax debts, while business accounts he controlled were paying substantial personal expenses. And it went beyond spending. According to DOJ, Chappelle concealed a Lake Michigan vacation home from the IRS. He purchased real estate in companies' name or other people's names to hide those assets from the IRS and to interfere with collections. That's where this becomes a very different situation. Being unable to pay is one thing. Hiding assets and providing false information to prevent the IRS from collecting is another. That's when IRS criminal investigations got involved. You might think this would be the point where the conduct stopped, but it wasn't. The public record shows investigators were able to compare what Chappelle was telling the government with financial, property, and payroll information. DOJ states that Chappelle made false statements to IRS criminal investigation agents about real estate he had purchased. One property he failed to disclose was a house in Ohio. Here's what makes that stand out. He had purchased the house only 1 month earlier. But what happened next may be an even bigger mistake. While IRS criminal investigations was already investigating him, Chappelle filed an employment tax return for Terra Holdings, claiming the company had no employees and paid no wages during the period covered by the return. There was a problem. Chappelle had personally approved submissions to the company's payroll provider showing employees existed and wages had been paid. So the tax return said no employees and no wages. The payroll information showed otherwise. And there was still another issue. When Chappelle refinanced the mortgage on his Lake Michigan vacation home, he admitted making false statements on the loan application. He fabricated bank statements that were submitted that made it appear one of his companies had substantially more money than it actually had. DOJ said Chappelle then falsely blamed another employee for fabricating those statements. Now look at how this escalated. Unpaid employment taxes became an IRS collection problem. Then came false financial statements, concealed assets, personal spending while claiming hardship, false statements to an IRS criminal investigations agent, and a false employment tax return filed while criminal investigations was already underway. That's why saying he went to prison because he couldn't pay his payroll taxes would not be the full picture. On April 26, 2022, Chappelle pled guilty to tax evasion. On October 11, 2022, he was sentenced to 38 months in federal prison and 3 years of supervised release. The court also ordered $1.2 million in restitution and a $150,000 fine. Chappelle appealed his sentence and the Sixth Circuit affirmed it. My That Tax Guru take. Here's what I want you to remember. There is a major difference between not being able to pay the IRS and trying to make the IRS believe you're unable to pay. If you generally cannot afford to pay your tax debt, there may be legitimate collection alternatives available. Tell the truth about your financial situation and deal with the tax problem you actually have. And business owners, there's another lesson here. Do not treat withheld employment taxes like emergency operating cash. If your business is struggling to make its payroll tax deposits, address the problem before it grows. The most important part of this story isn't the yacht, it isn't the houses, and it isn't the plastic surgery. Those details get your attention. The real lesson is what happens when a tax collection problem was followed by affirmative acts to prevent the IRS from collecting. Being unable to pay the IRS is one thing. Telling the IRS you're unable to pay while concealing assets and providing false information is something very different. If you enjoy learning how the tax system actually works through real federal tax cases, follow That Tax Guru. Real tax crimes, real court cases, real lessons, That Tax Guru tax crime file stories.
Finally took a stand. Now the business looking clean, money coming through. Everybody asking who helped me break through. That tax guru got me thinking bigger now. That tax guru ain't no looking down. From the chaos to the confidence, from surviving to accomplishments. Now the whole team leveling up. Yeah, we built this from the ground up. I stopped running from the problem, started building.